Hello class. Today we shall continue again with the reading and understanding of the story A Strange Night for Mr. Sashmal. We had read till the part that Mr. Sashmal had rented a forest bungalow in northern Bihar for 3 days, and he was very happy because the forest bungalow did not have any other occupant other than him and the chowkidar, which suited him very well because he did not want to be disturbed by anyone. During the night after dinner, Mr. Sashmal notices that a stray dog, a scraggy looking, strange dog, had entered into his room. And when it looked quite threatening because Mr. Mr. Sashmal had seen in his young days that a neighbor's son had been bitten by a rabid dog and had developed hydrophobia. And he had seen the boy suffer, therefore, he did not want to disturb, or he did not want to um, do anything that would cause the dog to attack him. Therefore, he called the chowkidar. But when the chowkidar came, he did not uh, find any dog in the room. And Mr. Sashmal, we shall be continuing from there. Mr. Sashmal could not help feeling a little foolish. He sent the chowkidar back and took the easy chair again. He had almost finished his cigarette. Now he flicked the stub. Flick means to throw, and stub of the cigarette means the butt of the cigarette, the end of the cigarette out of the window. Then he raised his arm over his head and stretched lazily. And in doing so, noticed something. The dog had not gone. Or if it had, it was back again and was standing once more in the same corner. How annoying! If it was allowed to remain, no doubt his new slippers from Bata would be chewed to pieces during the night. Mr. Sashmal was well aware of a dog's passion for unattended slippers. He picked them up from the floor and placed them on the table. So when the chowkidar could not find any dog in the room, Mr. Sashmal felt a little foolish, but then he felt as if the dog might have moved out of the room, and he finished his cigarette and he stretched lazily on his uh, in his easy chair when suddenly he saw that the dog was back. It had not left the room. It was standing in the same corner, and Mr. Sashmal knew that if the dog was allowed to remain in the room, then his new slippers that he had bought from Bata would be chewed during the course of the night. Because he knew that dogs have a passion, have a liking for unattended slippers, and they wreck them, ruin them if they can. So he placed those slippers on the table. Instead, he took them from the floor and placed them on the table. Now there was another occupant in the room. Never mind. Let it be there for the moment. He tried to drive it out once again before he went to bed. Mr. Sashmal stretched an arm and took a novel out of the Indian Airlines bag he had kept on the table. He had folded the page where he had stopped reading. Just as he slipped a finger into the page to open the book, his eyes fell on the corner opposite the dog. Quite unbeknown. Unbeknown means without attracting any attention. To him, another creature had slipped into the room. So, Now, Mr. Sashmal did not want to do anything about the dog. He felt, okay, fine, if there is another occupant in the room, he is not going to do about anything about it right now. Possibly when he would be about to go to bed, he would try to drive it out of the room. Thinking about this, Mr. Sashmal took a novel that he had been reading out of his bag, and he had dog-eared the page where he had stopped reading. And when he opened he was just about to open the novel when he noticed that another creature was there in the room. And what was it? We are going to get to know about it now in the next paragraph. It was a cat with stripes all over its body like a tiger. Curled into a ball, it was staring at him through dim yellow eyes. Where had he seen a cat like that? Oh, yes, the Kundus, who lived in the house next door, had 7 cats. One of them had looked just like this one. That night, the whole thing came back to Mr. Sashmal quite vividly. Vividly means clearly. About 6 months ago, he had been woken up one night by the sound of constant caterwauling. Caterwauling means the sound, the wailing, the crying sound made by cats. He had already, he was already in a foul mood. Foul, bad. His business partner Adhir had had a violent argument with him just the day before, threatening to go to the police to expose him. It had nearly it had nearly come to blows. Come to blows means to turn into a physical fight. As a result, Mr. Shashwal was not finding it easy to sleep, and now this cat was screaming its head off. After half an hour of tolerating the noise, he ran out of patience. To run out of patience means to become impatient, to become irritated. Picking up a heavy glass paperweight from his table, he hurled it out of the window. Threw it out of the window. Towards the source of the noise, it stopped instantly. So, which was the other occupant of the room? The other occupant of the room was a cat, very, very without attracting the attention of Mr. Sashmal. It had somehow entered into the room and was sitting in the corner which was just opposite to the dog, and it was looking at Mr. Sashmal with its yellow eyes. When Mr. Sashmal saw it in the room, he thought that it somehow felt that he somehow felt that he had seen this cat earlier. And suddenly he remembered the Kundus who lived next door, who were his neighbors, had 7 cats, and one of these cats looked just like this cat with stripes all over its body like a tiger. And one night he remembered that he was in a very, very bad mood about 6 months ago. Mr. Sashwal remembers that he was in a very, very bad mood. He had had a very foul argument with his business partner, Adhir Chakravarti, who did not agree with the way Mr. Sashmal was working, and he had threatened to go to the police. And Mr. Sashmal had nearly had a physical fight with him. Therefore, after coming back from this argument, he was not being able to sleep, and this whole night the cat had been wailing. It had been crying, much to the irritation of Mr. Sashmal. Uh, After having tolerated it for quite some time, when Mr. Sashmal was at the end of his tether, he was so very irritated because he was not being able to sleep because of this caterwauling. He got annoyed, he got angry, and he threw a heavy paperweight from the. He took up a heavy paperweight from the table and he threw it at the source of the noise, and the noise immediately stopped. So we'll go to the next paragraph. The next morning, the entire household of the Kundus was in an uproar. Uproar means it was very disturbed. Someone had brutally murdered one of its cat, the striped tomcat, it was being said. This had amused Mr. Sashmal. Amused means it seemed funny to him. The murder of a cat? If this could be called a murder, why people were committing murders every day without even thinking about it? Memories of another incident came back to him. It had happened many years ago. When he was still in college, he used to stay in the college hostel. One day, he happened to notice a long row of little ants going up a wall in his room. Mr. Sashmal had grabbed a newspaper, lit one end of it, and run the burning flame down to the column of ants. As he watched, each of the tiny insects shriveled and died before dropping to the floor. Could that be described as murder? So, Mr. Sashmal, as we know, threw a heavy paperweight and it landed on the cat and it killed the cat, which he came to know the next morning when the Kundu household was up in an uproar. Somebody had killed its uh, striped tomcat and somebody had murdered it. Everybody was saying, and this amused Mr. Sashmal a lot because the murder of a cat, the very idea seemed funny to him. He also remembered that once while in college, he had burnt down a column of ants which he had seen on the wall. So, does burning of ants be also called a murder? Now, in this paragraph, there is a word shriveled. Shriveled means to curl up. To shrivel means to shrink and curl. That is called when something is burned or when something dries, it curls up, it becomes it shrinks down. That is called shriveling. So we have read up to this class. We will continue with the story next in the next class. Thank you so much.